I was thinking I might actually time-lapse this.
Okay. Take your headphones off. There we go.
Hello and welcome back to Widowed AF. You're here with Rosie Gilmoss and the delectable Jonathan Gilmoss. Hi, John.
Hi, Rose. Hi, everybody.
Would you like me to introduce you in a sort of lovely descriptive way every week?
Delectable. I feel like a sandwich.
It sounds a little bit naughty. Right, anyway, I digress, as always. So welcome back. Thank you for joining us once again. Today we are going to reflect a little bit on Monday's episode, which was brought to us courtesy of the incredible Jimmy Wilde. He has had an incredible story to tell, and we were really, really privileged to be able to tell it. And the way he talks about his partner Tom is it's kind of heartbreaking, but also there's quite a lot of humour. I don't think going into this job I expected to laugh quite so much when talking to people, which feels a bit inappropriate, but you don't lose your sense of humour just because somebody you love dies. And actually, in many ways, you get a little bit darker, right?
Yeah, most certainly. Most certainly.
You tend to sort of be drawn to people that will make the same wildly inappropriate comments. I mean, for example, the fact that I insist on calling John my alive husband, which makes some people a little bit uncomfortable, I'm sure. So, first things first, for anybody who hasn't listened to Jimmy's episode, and if you haven't, I really would suggest you do, because it is an incredibly engaging and actually quite brilliant episode in terms of what the content that he gave. I'm not patting myself on the back. But one thing he mentioned was he spoke with me, poured his heart out, and then he had an hour and he had a job interview. I mean, I talk about, skin of your teeth, but I would like to report that he got the job. So congratulations, Jimmy. We are all very, very pleased for you.
Yeah, well done, Jimmy.
And we'll maybe insert a little round of applause. I could do it, look. Do we have it already? That's not lovely. Thank you. Still nothing.
What?
Did you hear it?
Did you not get the cheers? Well, let's see if it come out in the recording. Secret cheers, everybody. Secret cheers. Oh, everyone will think I'm mad.
So, as we just said, this kind of, laughing while talking about death is something that we do tend to do quite a bit of. So Jimmy came to me courtesy of Anthony Parks, who was one of our very early adopters of the podcast. He came on certainly within the first 5 episodes, and he spoke beautifully, as all our guests do. And he and Jimmy have become friends through one of the Way offshoots. And I think he said that how therapeutic and sort of kind of empowering he'd found it. And Jimmy was really keen to have a go. I mean, he was brilliant. Unbelievably, Jimmy's partner, Tom, he died of a stroke at just 30 years old, which doesn't seem like something that happens. It's really odd. As he was telling the story, I was thinking, oh my God, this happens. And I suppose thinking back to many of the stories and, people dying in childbirth and things like this, the things that you don't expect to happen sometimes do. That's quite scary.
Yeah, but I mean, that's why we have to live in the moment.
Yeah, exactly that. We can't worry about what's coming up the road, as I think a very fabulous band once said, First Aid Kit. And he also, one of the things he said was, everything just did go wrong. And I thought that is so relatable to so many people within our widowed tribe, that however your partner or your loved one died, there will be a moment, a kind of cataclysmic moment where your life changed. For me, it was the knock at the door. For you, presumably, it was said by a surgeon.
Yeah, it was the conversation when they no longer a candidate.
Yeah, and at that moment, everything just changes. Your life ceases to be the same anymore. And that, that is, it's shocking and it's terrifying and it's incredibly, incredibly lonely. But one thing that he did speak about, which I really liked, is apparently his last words, Tom's last words to him were, shut the fuck up. We're going to play you this clip now because it just made us belly laugh when we were talking about such a sad time in Jimmy's life. And I kind of like that in a person, if I'm honest.
Yeah, me too.
So have a listen. Here we go. Oh, I've just written that down. Everything did go wrong. That's a really powerful sentence, that one, isn't it? Everything did go wrong because It did, and so many people relate to that everything went wrong in that moment. Did you ever see him again?
Yeah, so I went back to hospital the next day and thought he's going to be lucid, fine, as he is. Went back and he was completely gone again. He was confused. He didn't really know who people were. He couldn't talk properly, and he just declined really rapidly. And I mean, within 15 minutes,
Jesus.
within 15 minutes, the doctors reckoned he was dead. And I remember watching all of these people just swarm into this room, and consultants shining lights into his eyes not dilating, him not breathing properly, a crash trolley. And I'm thinking, I'm like, am I having an out of body experience? He was fine 12 hours ago.
Yeah.
Them rushing him out of this stroke ward into resus, doing scans, doctor saying, we're going to have to take him to Nottingham Hospital to have an operation on his skull if they think that's suitable. They took him away. The last words Tom ever said to me while he was kind of in and out of consciousness was, he looked at me and went, babe. And I went, what? He went, please shut the fuck up. Because I was crying my eyes out. And that was
I feel really bad for laughing then. Oh my goodness, that's wonderful.
Tom used to love to say, shut the fuck up.
I love to say shut the fuck up.
I annoyed him all the time, and I will own that.
That's relationships, isn't it? That's half the fun.
He went, babe, shut the fuck up. And I was like, oh God, sorry.
And were those his last words to you?
Those were his last words to me. And yeah, so he was taken to QMC, and we were in the car there, and my phone starts ringing, and a consultant on the phone, he's a surgeon, and he goes, this is going to be quite a difficult conversation to have while you're in the car.
So you can hear there that they've obviously both managed to keep their sense of humour, and I really like that. And at the end, they were able to lay together on a bed and, as Jimmy said, do their favourite thing, which is take a nap. And they listened to Codaline, I think it was The One, which we will pull together a little montage actually for Jimmy. We will explain why we've been a little behind on the socials this week. But the injustice, and so many of our listeners will be able to relate to this, the injustice not only of you being denied the person that you love and potentially their children being denied, but it's also how much they've been robbed. And as he said that, I really thought back to when Ben died and how much I kept saying, it's not fair. He doesn't get to see his kids grow up. He doesn't get to live the rest of his life. And it is just a horrible injustice. And we talk a lot about feeling powerless and how having all your power taken away in that moment, because nothing you say, do, beg, steal, borrow is going to bring them back. And then you're just left sort of surveying the wreckage. And it is really difficult. And he talked about how counselling is so helpful, but after the hour's finished, that's when you're left with your thoughts. And I think that's why a lot of us do turn to alcohol or other coping mechanisms, because once, if you have children, or if you want, particularly if you have children, because you're quite trapped in the house, aren't you? Once they've gone to bed, what do you do with those thoughts?
I think that's why you have the chicken and wine phase, is because you need to burn it out first. Then go, actually, I can't do this anymore. I've got to try something else. And then you can take the steps.
And actually, in that moment, you're not ready to put your head above the parapet and see what's going on back out in the world. You feel very insular, and that kind of the troll analogy. So I think perhaps you don't, even if you could perhaps want to go out into the world, you kind of want to stay in, but you don't want to be on your own. And, people have their own lives. It's a tough one. It is a tough one. And as he said, you learn to rely on yourself. And I think once you can start to try and do that, and it's difficult. God, it's difficult. I barely rely on myself, but nobody's going to do it for you, are they? Nobody's going to swoop in and pull you out. You do. They might throw you a line, but you have to pull yourself out yourself eventually.
You do, unfortunately, yeah. But once you start the process and you get to the other side, it's different, but it's better.
Yeah, it is. It is. Sometimes it doesn't feel like it, does it? Sometimes it feels like you're sort of poking an old wound and things, and that it won't get better. But it does. And, I posted on Instagram yesterday that I'd had a run, and I was very proud of myself. I went for one today as well, just for your information. A little bit more of a fan than I used to be, but I'm going a lot shorter distance and not really stressing about technique or time. So it's actually quite fun just running a bit sort of Phoebe from Friends-esque with the dog. But yeah, I had a bit of a crash, and we turned to the NHS because I felt a little bit frightened and a little bit scared about how strong some of my feelings were. And sadly, we were let down, and that really kind of compounded it, the loneliness and the isolation, because probably for the first time, actually, I'd reached out to the NHS and asked for some help because, you know, I have private counselling because there is, unfortunately, just a woeful lack of resources at the moment. And they basically humiliated me.
Yeah.
And I felt I just felt horrible. It was really, really difficult. And when you look at from the outside and everything seems really good, and, you know, you don't know what's going on beneath. And I'm very good at keeping a brave face on and kind of basically running myself until eventually burnout happens. And that's what happened. I had a burnout, basically. So I've taken a little bit of step back from quite a lot of things recently. Cancelled a few and get social engagements and just sort of tried to recuperate a little bit, because whilst everything is exciting and fun that we're doing, sometimes it can be a lot, and, you know, we do have to protect our own mental health as well. So that's why we've just maybe been a little bit quieter on the socials. But the good news is I'm back. I feel much more like myself again. God knows what triggered it, but what can you do, right? You just got to roll with it.
It's been a busy 10 weeks, of 8 weeks, 6 weeks.
Yeah, it has, and we've had one finish already. We've got two finished tomorrow, and then we've got one that doesn't finish till next Thursday. So we were sort of dragging ourselves across the finish line.
Going really, really slowly. Weirdly, I'm actually looking forward to.
Oh, I can't
no
wait!
more school runs,
I can't wait.
lazy mornings and.
But I also am very aware that so many people will be sitting now and thinking, shit, how am I going to get through the summer holidays? Because they are expensive, they are long, and my God, you get sick of seeing people having lots of lovely family times. And I mean, the one thing I would say to you is, do remember that those family photos were probably, you know, pulled together through threats for the children to smile. Just fucking smile. And, you know, they probably had a row before they went out. But that's not very charitable of me, is it? But what you see in a picture and on Instagram and things, it is just part of the picture. And people, you know, who still do have their spouses, they will still be, you know, it won't be this Instagram perfect vision that you're seeing. Now, one thing I would suggest actually is, if you are a member of Way, or if you're thinking about becoming a member of Way, they do organise holidays and trips. And I've done 2, and they are really valuable because you are with people that get it.
Yeah, I did one.
That was when we got caught snogging.
Yeah, and then there was like a meet-up in a park down in Ashford.
Oh, was that the one that you said to me that you'd go to and then you didn't turn up at? Oh, no, I didn't turn up at.
You didn't turn up
at. Oh,
yeah,
that was me. Okay, let's edit that bit out then. That we don't want to keep.
But it was good. Everyone just hung out, kids played, there was frisbees. It was
right. I think if you can get together with Way offshoots, and there's lots of local groups, and I'm not affiliated with Way, but I genuinely think that they are a really good resource if you're feeling particularly cast adrift this summer, which many of us will be. I'm just going to take us back in a little bit to Jimmy's episode, because one of the other notes I've written down, one of my copious, terribly written and almost indecipherable notes, and what he said was the ITU nurses were crying. And you think the amount of tragedy and death that they must see, and this particular story moved them to tears. And there's one moment where he describes actually himself crying into the COVID mask, which I think is one of the saddest descriptions I've ever heard. Yeah. But doesn't that tell you so much about the love between these two? And the fact that they were, you know, the medical staff were moved to tears by the loss. And I think that's such a lovely legacy to leave. You know, the fact that your love was so clear that people that didn't know you could see it.
Yeah, yeah.
And one of the things he said to him I thought was really beautiful. And he said, you know, love other people, love yourself, but don't forget about me. And that's all tied into legacy and this fear of being forgotten. And I said it in the episode, and I said, no, I think actually coming on here and recording your stories is a really valuable way of preserving their legacy, because their story will be out there for as long as you want it to be. And I think I like the thought of that.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. In fact, we were saying we might re-record or record a sort of conversation between the two of us kind of going into our own stories and what brought us into the Widow Club, because we recorded ours 6 months ago with very different tech. So it'd be interesting to see, now we've warmed up, how that goes.
I think the audio's a little bit better.
The audio might be a little bit better. The one that we recorded in the dining room, which is the kind of most cavernous room, the echo. We were learning. We are not professionals. I know it's hard to believe, but we are not professionals.
Not even close. Not even close.
Do you know what? I wasn't going to talk about this in as much detail because I'm guilty of oversharing, and I'm always a little bit conscious that I reveal too much about my personal life. But actually, we encourage that here. We encourage talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly, because none of us go through life squeaky clean and perfect, and we all do things that we feel shame over or embarrassed about. And on Monday, it wasn't yesterday that we went to the hospital. No, Tuesday. I was feeling really, really crap, and I basically, they don't happen very often. I'm not a sad or depressed person, but I will get these kind of horrible little bouts where I just feel very, very bleak. And John went to the GP and said, is there something we can do? Because, my wife's obviously quite distressed. And they sent us, to the hospital. Now, when we were there, not only was I told that if I left, the police would arrest me and bring me back in cuffs, I was also told that social services would have to investigate. I was then told, after 7 hours, that the best they could do is refer me to community mental health. So I love the NHS, but I don't love the way mental health is treated within it, because I didn't know what to do. I was very, very upset, and I reached out to my access point, which is the GP, followed their advice, and was humiliated, terrified, and left feeling more isolated and alone than ever. Sorry, it's making me emotional saying it, but I think I'm going to try and leave this in. And I came away, and I'm very fortunate because I am under the care of a private psychiatrist, because I have ADHD, and you have to be, a psychiatrist in order to have medication. And as such, I was able to reach out to him and say, what on earth happened? What is this? What's happening? And it's at this point that something called PMDD was discussed, which is a sort of a hormonal fluctuation which causes, really, really terrible mood swings. So if you're suffering from these things and you have a uterus, and then maybe go and have a look into this, because I had never heard of this, but it answers quite a lot of questions. So I don't have a formal diagnosis. I'm going through the process now. But yeah, how interesting that something can be that catastrophic to women's lives and nobody's talking about it. And whilst I know this is not a podcast about women's health, maybe I'll do one day, I do think it's relevant because so many of us it may be exacerbated by, the circumstances we find ourselves in. But yeah, I was quite shocked actually. And to clarify, we have spoken to social services and they have dropped the case. There's no case to answer because obviously my children are safe. And I feel very vulnerable talking about this here because it's talking about my children, and it's probably one of the most upsetting things that's ever happened since Ben died, was the thought that I might bring that to my door.
But as I said to the lady on the phone earlier on today, I walked her through the entire experience because I was sat with you for those 7 hours up in A&E and witnessed these people.
You never left my side.
Witnessed these people and their attitude and everything else, and understanding mental health in a unique way that I do.
We do from what we do here.
From what we do here, from the past, from sorting myself out, from everything else. It was diabolical. So when they rang up to chat about how this affected our children, I gave them full chapter and verse and explained that all the things that we do for the children and the people that we speak to about the children and the help we get the children, and then explained how this nurse, for want of a better word, mental health nurse in the hospital,
worrying. I think it might have been a doctor. Oh no, there was two, wasn't there?
And the threats for if you leave, the police will come back, and then when you definitely wanted to leave, the security guard wouldn't do the pin.
I felt like a caged animal, and I had a full meltdown because that's what happens when you constrain an autistic person who is frightened. They melt down, and I did not shower myself in glory. And but as my counsellor said, you weren't angry, you were frightened, and that's true. I was frightened. So I came home, and actually speaking to my doctor, really comforted me and gave me. I guess the idea that there is an answer, and it could be as simple as changing my contraception. I mean, wow. So I feel like I've really kind of dragged the mood down a little bit there, and I do apologise to anybody. And I'm probably going to ruminate a lot on whether to put this out tomorrow, but I'm going to try because, and obviously if you're hearing this, I did. Because I can't be the only one. I can't be the only one that has, tentatively asked for help, when they really didn't want to, and found that none was there. And I'm really, really sorry if that has happened to you. And if you would like to talk to me at all, please do message us on Instagram, or there's the Facebook group. And I really do try wherever I possibly can to reply personally to each and every message I get, because I feel very kind of protective of you all. I mean, I was going to say we were thinking we should do a celebration of 25,000 downloads, but we're hurtling towards 30. So there's quite a lot of you out there now. But
So it has got a lot busier this last couple of weeks. So thank you for liking, and Sam, thank you for subscribing. There we go. The mood's back up again there.
Well, do you know what? I think while we're laughing, I'm going to call this episode to an end. We never quite know where they're going to go when we start, which I think is probably the beauty of what creates the magic here. So if you've listened so far, thank you very much for sticking with us, and lots and lots of love. And I hope you're all doing all right out there.
Goodbye, everybody.